Afternoon, and I'm joined in studio today with Misty Maris and Alora Nanos. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline.
I really enjoyed our conversation, the last segment that we did about the Me Too movement, and now we're moving on to a little bit more of a thorny issue, a specific issue. Alora, you bring a pretty ring, I noticed. Could you show our viewers? Okay, it's gorgeous.
Well, thank you.
Okay, now
Lovely.
that's your engagement ring, I
Yes,
presume. Okay.
from years ago. I'm now married.
Okay,
I'm keeping it.
Yes, yes, you are. You are.
Keeping the engagement ring.
Yes. Yeah. But had you broken off your engagement prior to the marriage, that could present some thorny legal questions.
Oh, it's thorny.
It's very thorny,
It's
which is why we want to talk about a specific case. You may have heard of the Koch brothers, who are a family of oil tycoons. They're famous for contributing to conservative causes. Those are Charles and David Koch, but there are two other brothers. Right?
Yeah.
And they have sons. And William Koch's son, Wyatt Koch, has been in the news lately a lot because his very beautiful fiancée decided she no longer wanted to go forward with the marriage. And
it was a pretty short engagement, too. They were only engaged for a few months.
Okay, and she's keeping the ring, guys.
She decided she's keeping the ring.
She wants to keep the ring. So, Alora, you are a family law expert. Take us through this case. I don't know much about it.
This is like the textbook typical dispute among or between fiancés when an engagement breaks off. Now, once a marriage happens, once a wedding happens, it becomes a little bit of a different issue. But when you have the standard textbook situation, guy gives girl an engagement ring, they then become engaged, there's a proposal in there someplace, they decide to get married, and then the couple breaks up before the wedding happens. The question is, who gets the ring?
Right.
And I always wonder, like, well, why would she want to even keep the ring? Like, what are you going to do with an engagement ring from a guy that you didn't
hello,
have?
hawk
But
it
you're
and
gonna
get
sell
some
it.
money.
Or meld it into a beautiful necklace, or maybe a couple
never
of
occurred
earrings.
to you?
I don't know.
You're
I've
good.
heard
You're
of
good.
bad
You're a
luck.
good person.
She's a
You're
little bit of
good
an
person.
angel.
Yeah,
You're like the
that's
devil on Alora's shoulder.
But in this case, so I have to, like, in this case, you're talking about, it's an 8.5 carat ring, first of all. It's like gigantic.
Let's stop talking about the law first. Let's just take a moment to take in that fact.
Yeah, like
It's like one of these. Like,
it's like a
can't even
doorknob.
lift
They
your
were like,
hand.
here you go, have a ring. Like,
I mean, what does that even look like? You need a
looks
wheel
like
to
a
hold
doorknob.
it.
Yeah,
I mean, you couldn't even take it.
she probably
with
has
you.
an intern to, like, carry her. Like,
You probably always have to wear
hand around.
sunglasses, because if the sun right into
I've
your eyes.
honestly never heard of such a thing. I
that's
didn't know
ridiculous.
that existed.
But I'll say this, actually, for an 8.5 carat diamond, I bet you it doesn't sound like it's a great quality stone. Because
Really?
no, because he spent $150,000 on it, which is a lot of money. But I actually don't think it sounds like that much money for a ring of that size.
Oh.
But which
I don't
interesting.
know. I don't know about
I
these
kind
things.
of like to look into, I know we talk about law here, but maybe
diamond,
we should
yeah.
get a diamond expert in here to come
A
in.
gemologist.
Yes.
Yes.
To say.
Okay.
But so
ring
I'm on
quality.
it. I'm on it.
So,
Okay.
so they get engaged, then they break up before they get married, and the question is, who does he get the ring back, or does she get to keep it?
Now, does he demand the ring, or is it
Oh
just
yeah,
like,
he
okay.
sued her for it.
No, but I'm saying before.
I
did he
assume
say, like,
he
okay.
probably. I don't know that, but he,
Okay.
I mean, I assume he was like, all right, Toots, give me
Okay.
the ring back.
I mean,
And she was like,
presumably she's the one that broke off the engagement.
That's what it sounds
I
like
don't
from
know.
the media
Yeah.
report. The media reports make it sound like she broke off the engagement, but
You never know.
in these situations. There's always, when it comes to the ending of a relationship.
Yeah.
Matters of the heart.
Yes.
There's the story, and then there's the story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if you're married, all that's part of your divorce
Right.
agreement. That's
Right.
you know, it's all there's a legal stratosphere out there that handles just that type of law. But what about before you're married, but
Yeah.
you have property together, or you have something like a
Like in
8-carat diamond ring?
So I mean, here's if you
We
think
should all be so lucky, by the way.
Seriously,
guys.
like,
Wouldn't
what a
this
problem
be
I
to
just
have.
noticed there's
Problems.
nothing on.
I forgot my wedding ring today. Sorry, Ryan. Sorry.
So here's the situation, and this is one of those state by state issues. But in most states, the situation is we look at the ring and we say, was it a conditional gift, or was it, by contrast, just a regular gift?
Now tell us, break it down. What
So
does
here's
a conditional gift mean?
Yeah, and first I'm going to tell you, regular gift is exactly what we all think it is, which is somebody gives you something, you get to keep it. And in fact, even in the instance of divorce, a person always gets to keep gifts that were given to themselves gifts given to one person that were kept separate
prior to the marriage, or
no,
regardless?
even during the marriage. Like somebody gives you a birthday present while you're married, you get divorced. As long as you kept that your own separate property during your marriage, you're going to get to keep.
So that's not part of sort of the marital assets bucket that's going to get. Okay, interesting.
So,
I didn't know that.
So gifts are. I mean, unless it was something where it was cash and you mixed it up with your marital money. But in most situations, gifts given to one person are their own separate property. But things are different when we have what's called a conditional gift. And conditional gifts don't have to be just engagement rings. They could be any number of things. But a conditional gift is something that is given to another person, but it's given where the concept is, if you do X thing, then you get to keep this piece of property, okay? Right. And in the typical proposal, engagement ring, open the box down on one knee situation, the concept is, you get to keep this ring if you marry me.
Now, Alora,
yes,
should we be recommending to our male clients who are about to propose?
You're going to say what I always tell my male clients.
After the ring box is open and she says yes, and that you sign a contract to that.
This is romantic.
You say, I just would like to confirm that this is a conditional gift and that you will be able to
I'll
retain
tell you what
ruin the mood?
I don't know.
Am I too much of a lawyer?
No, but you can say it nicely. You can say it like, this is an engagement ring so that you marry me. But also, what I always tell,
document?
I don't think you have to sign it because you can
tape record it.
Maybe, yeah, maybe there's an app for that.
Okay.
But I usually do tell my male clients, do not ever give an engagement ring on Christmas, Valentine's Day, or her birthday, because it blurs it so much, right? On Valentine's Day, you're going to give a gift. Like, don't try to get the twofer, okay? Valentine's Day, give a gift. Engagement, separate gift. Okay.
Interesting. That's a great
because
point.
It definitely muddies it if it's a gift giving holiday. You want to give it on Easter, knock yourself out.
Find it in an Easter egg somewhere.
Yeah, because that's not a typical gift giving holiday.
Got it.
But birthday, Christmas, anniversary, all of those things, I would kind of stay away from it because it muddies the waters. Unless you're willing to just give up the ring, which by the way this billionaire should be doing, because really. He has to get the $150,000 back.
Exactly.
Honestly.
So there must be some sour grapes here.
Oh, definitely. Somebody's mad.
Who knows
Somebody's
what
mad.
went on in that relationship? But
yeah,
that's one of the issues, though, in these types of cases, is that it's a little more complicated than just your classic property.
I mean, if you
it's
think
emotional,
right? And I mean, if you think about whatever ex-boyfriend or girlfriend that you hate the most in life, right? That's like the last person you want to be having a dispute with, So, but anyway, so the concept of the conditional gift is when somebody gives a gift and there is a condition attached to it. If the condition doesn't get fulfilled, the gift actually hasn't been transferred. So in an engagement situation, usually it is interpreted that the condition is getting married, not staying married, but getting married. So
that makes a lot of sense. That does.
And if you don't get married, if you don't get married, the title of the ring hasn't really transferred to the person receiving it. Therefore, it still belongs to the giver until and it could be literally they get married and 5 minutes later they get divorced. That's fine because the condition happened.
Annulment. Ooh,
right.
Let's throw a wrench in there.
No, even annulment, because the condition usually is that they get married.
Okay. Fine.
So they get married, and even if they get divorced or the wedding is annulled or what have you, it still becomes a private, separate gift to one spouse. So that person gets to keep it. And I know these days lots of women are also giving gifts to male fiancés, that's becoming a thing. Now we have same-sex marriage. Like, are they both getting rings? Is nobody getting a ring?
Right.
This is not necessarily like a male-female issue, but I mean, conditional gifts can take any number of shapes. And if it is in fact proven to be conditional and the marriage doesn't happen, there's going to be a good argument that the giver gets whatever it is back.
What if you're a clever lawyer and you say,
I am a clever lawyer.
Well, you are a clever lawyer. We're all clever lawyers here, and so I think that this might be an argument. Well, we got our marriage license. And so that fulfills my obligation as the giftee.
Every intention.
It depends.
But there were unforeseen circumstances.
It
something
depends
like an act of God.
and
guys, who's my client?
I hate to cut you short, but we're running out of time. We have to get to our next clip. I know, but
is the next clip about this guy's shirt?
Know your rights, okay? This was a good segment for knowing your rights. If you get engaged. Sorry, I have to move on because we are going live pretty soon to Brevard County Bond Court, which is first appearance court for defendants that were arrested within the last 24 hours. It's always Very exciting. You won't want to miss it. I want to talk about one more issue before we get there, and that is sort of dealing with domestic employees, work from home, home as a workplace. We want to talk a little bit about employment law surrounding these issues, and Misty is our girl for this issue. Misty, can you just sort of explain the legal landscape as it exists now for nannies, caretakers, maids, things of this nature?
Yeah, absolutely, because a lot of people don't really know the laws that are going to apply to a domestic worker. So there's a couple different instances. You have domestic workers that live in your home with you, take care of your children, take care of your household, anything like that, take care of an elderly relative, something like that. You also have those that come in and work every day, that maybe work 5, 6, 7 days a week, and oftentimes the people that are employing them, it's more of a personal connection than your typical employee-employer relationship. But what you have to remember, I know, and
I have no live-in help.
Well, and this is the thing.
Wouldn't it be nice you had the engagement ring and all these?
I think if you had the 8-carat ring, you probably have the live-in staff, and then maybe some of these issues wouldn't necessarily be such a problem. But if you are employing someone in your home in that capacity, you have to understand that an employee-employer relationship does exist. So this is where people get into trouble. Because you feel like this person is a part of the family, you never think about the formalities that would go into any other employment situation.
Awkward, right? Like it can be very awkward to have your housekeeper sign contracts or your nanny who's taking care of your children.
And you make the point, it's part of your family, and sort of the immediate thought is, we love them very much, but let's not forget that sometimes we treat our family very poorly. I mean, that's the worst people that we treat sometimes.
Exactly. And you know what? When you have somebody that's close, emotions bubble over a lot more than in a kind of separate, employer.
It's not arm's length.
Exactly. It's not detached. It's an attachment. So when things go bad, things can go really bad. So that's why if you do employ somebody in that capacity, you have to understand what the rules are in your particular state where you live, in your jurisdiction. Now, across the country, the FLSA, that's the Fair Labor Standards Act, talks about how you have to pay domestic workers.
That's federal.
And that's federal law. And we've seen these cases come up time and time again. We have Betty White, we have Mariah Carey. There's a lot of cases out there where housekeepers, caretakers end up bringing claims that they were not paid overtime.
Okay, and they are suing under this specific statute, this federal law.
Federal law, which says that everybody has to be paid minimum wage unless there are certain exemptions in the law, but domestic workers are covered by the FLSA. You have to be paid minimum wage. For every hour that you work, over 40 hours, you have to be paid overtime.
Which for somebody like a live-in nanny or a live-in housekeeper, is going to come up a lot, probably more than even people working regular jobs outside the home.
And that's the issue that oftentimes people don't understand. Now, the minimum wage rate is what's called 1.5 times the hourly rate. So not 1.5 times the minimum wage. If you're Betty White and I'm paying you $100 an hour, any hour over 40, you have to pay 1.5 times $100 an hour.
Here's my question. So if you have a live-in nanny or a baby nurse or something, and the person is required to be there 24 hours a day, but of course is not expected to work 24 hours a day, maybe they're sleeping, but they have to get up in the middle of the night, are you expected to pay them overtime for the I'm doing math, 16 hours a day?
Here's what's interesting, Laura, you bring up a great point. Under the federal law, if you have somebody living with you, there's an exemption for those employees.
And why
but
is
guess
that?
what? Because they're living there. And so it's less of a
part of the arrangement.
overtime situation. It's that they're there 24/7,
and it's presumed
7
that they
days
will have
a week,
breaks sort of
and
within
perhaps
the day.
they're paid on a salary. They're considered more of a salaried employee as opposed to an hourly worker.
Like an au pair, for example, who would be on certain times, off certain times.
But make sure everybody understands that's the federal law.
Right.
That exemption does not apply here. We're in New York, here in New York State. There's other states that the exemption doesn't apply, so you do have to pay overtime for every hour over 44 hours. That's New York. Again, you have to check the laws in your state, 1.5 times the hourly rate. Now, to your point, Alora, and here's what I'm talking about when you're saying that you've got employees that live in your home or work in your home and you're not really treating them in an employer-employee relationship. If that's the case, you need to be documenting, almost like you work in any sort of establishment where you have hourly employees, clock in, clock out. I'm not saying you need a punch card, but you need to, 9 a.m., sign out, 10 p.m., sleep, work.
And that's for what? That's to cover your bases in case
the person comes back and says, I worked a zillion hours overtime, and you're like, no, you didn't. How are you going to prove that the person did or did not? And then if somebody brings a wage and hours case, I mean, it can be very costly even to defend it, and nobody's got any records of anything.
And short of that, not having records is the absolute killer in these cases. Yep. Even though you're just a homeowner employing someone in your home who you're not really looking at necessarily as an employee, the law is clear. And in New York State, the law is even more onerous for the employer. And that's, you have to maintain certain records. You have to have certain records on file. And even if you can show that you were paid, people definitely
don't know it. Like as a person hiring a nanny, a person hiring a housekeeper, you think of it in an ideal situation. You think of it as in agreement between equals, right? Yes, I'm paying you, but still I respect you as another person, and you don't think of them as like lording anything over them.
And you have a back and forth.
So right, you have this back and forth to take care of my kids. I respect you, you respect me, but you don't think of it as something where you have an actual, real legal obligation that you must maintain record. And if you're not doing it, you're actually doing something wrong and breaking the law.
And
I
think you get sued, not only do you owe those potential back wages or overtime, you also can be charged with basically punishment damages, like $5,000 per document you don't have. I mean, the law is really very. Absolutely. There's liquidated damages in the federal law under the FLSA. There's high damages under the New York equivalent. Now, what you need, and this is what I'm just gonna read, because these are the requirements. So think about this if you have people in your home in New York and in a lot of other states now. So just to take a step back, domestic workers kind of fell into this foggy oblivion for a long time because Title VII, which is the laws we were talking about before in the Me Too movement, sexual harassment, discrimination, civil rights, only apply to employers with 15 employees or more. So a lot of these issues weren't being addressed.
Your home doesn't
Same
count as
with
a workplace in that regard.
Legislation changed the FLSA to explicitly include domestic workers who were falling under various exclusions that would keep them from the benefit of the law. And you know what? People were capitalizing on it, and that's why the law had to shift and change. So states have now taken affirmative action. While the FLSA protects you from a wage and hour perspective, now you'll see in many states there's what's called Domestic Workers Bill of Rights. New York was the pioneer here, and in 2010 passed these laws that even if you're an employer, and as an employer you're just a household and you employ one person, a domestic worker in your home,
full-time?
It doesn't even have to be full-time. You still have to fulfill your obligations under the wage and hour law, and this also meaning they're paid minimum wage. The other issue is that now Title VII applies. So if you do have someone working in your home who says, look, your son, daughter, a person in your home said something to be inappropriate, there's liability.
Yeah, I mean,
and you have to investigate it. It is a big deal.
This is a big deal because now you're talking about how many cases have we heard in the news about the husband, the dad and the nanny, and the young nanny. We've heard that a million times, right?
How many times is that exploited? We don't know. And because there's this difference between no legal remedy.
Ben Affleck, watch out!
Ben Affleck, watch out!
Oh my gosh, he better watch out.
So, and now now Jude we have right, like watch it. And now you have these assuming that it's a young woman, these people have recourse. Not only do they have recourse, but they have the support of the legal community who is saying, look, these cases are serious. They're just as serious as something that happens in a large workplace.
Guys, I hate to cut this conversation short. I'm just hearing in my ear that Brevard County Bond Court is in session now. It's live. We're going to take our viewers live to that courtroom. Thank you both for being here so much. Ladies Who Law, it was a great segment. Please come back and let's do this more often.
All right.
But right now, we'll take our viewers to Brevard County.